You can guzzle salt tablets all you want, and you might still cramp during your Ironman race. Why? Because the real cause might have nothing to do with electrolytes. Today, we're tackling one of the most frustrating race day disasters and giving you some strategies to say goodbye to those bloody horrible things that make your racing so much less enjoyable. And if you're new here, then hey, my name's James and I'm a registered sports and exercise nutritionist. I work with amateur and pro triathletes to help them take the guesswork out of nutrition so that they can train, recover, and race faster. Now, you've probably heard it 100 times. Cramping? Take more salt. But that's not the full picture. In fact, focusing purely on salt could be missing the real reason why you cramp. By the end of this video, you'll understand the two main causes of cramping in an Ironman and exactly how to fix them. So I had a consultation last year where a triathlete came to me having struggled with cramping in their first Ironman. Rather understandably, they wanted to stop this from happening again because it put a bit of a downer on their race. Halfway through the bike, they started to get those niggles, and by the run, they were falling apart. This triathlete had done a couple of 70.3s and had reasonably good fitness. They sent over their nutrition plan knowing that their sodium levels, or salt to most of us, were low, and so they needed to refine their plan to stop those pesky cramps. Except it wasn't their nutrition plan. At least, not entirely. Before we get into what I think was the real problem, let's talk about sodium, because it is a key player in this whole cramping conundrum. Sodium is crucial, no question about it. It plays key roles in fluid balance, muscle contraction, and nerve signal transmission. So it's easy to connect low sodium to cramping. When you sweat, you lose water and electrolytes, sodium being the primary one. If you're racing for 10, 12, or 14 hours, losing multiple liters of sweat and not replacing sodium, you can create a serious imbalance here and run the risk of something called hyponatremia, which is the medical term for low blood sodium levels. So you good, diligent, nutrition-loving triathlete, load up on the salt, heaps of it sometimes, to stop those cramps in their tracks. But here's the nuance. The actual scientific link between sodium depletion and muscle cramping isn't that strong. We know that even athletes with relatively stable sodium levels can cramp, and athletes with low sodium don't always cramp. What we have instead is a mix of theoretical models. It makes logical sense that low sodium could cause cramping, and anecdotal evidence with athletes reporting improvements when they manage their sodium levels better. This means that while sodium can play a role in cramping, it's not the whole story. Over shorter races like 70.3, cramping from low sodium is even less unlikely unless you've completely neglected your hydration. But over the Ironman distance, it is reasonable to be proactive about your sodium to perhaps prevent cramps, but also to keep you safer because you're reducing the risk of low blood sodium levels. The guidance I give to triathletes is to aim for 500 to 2000 milligrams of sodium per litre of fluid, adjusting based on your sweat rate, sweat sodium concentration, and race conditions like heat and humidity. If you have no idea where you fall, start around 800 to 1000 milligrams of sodium per litre of fluid and adjust how you feel, as well as things like how salty your sweat is. Telltale signs that you are a salty sweater are white stains on your clothing and stinging in your eyes after a hard training session. I don't specifically recommend that most people do commercial sweat testing where they measure the electrolyte concentrations in their sweat. In my opinion, these just aren't reliable enough. They're too heavily influenced by external factors, and they also only provide a snapshot in time. You can do sweat rate testing yourself, and in terms of sodium amount, I'd prefer if you just hit the right sodium benchmarks that we've talked about. This is enough for almost every triathlete, so save your money. And a final point here is that you shouldn't ever work out your sodium amounts in a race as sodium per hour. We do that for carbs and fluid, so it makes sense that you would do the same for sodium. But it's not the right way to do it. You should base your sodium intake on the amount of fluid you consume because it's the concentration of sodium in the fluid that's important. So if you drink more or less fluid, proportionally you consume more or less sodium too. Now you might be saying here, but James, I've heard about people have massive improvements in their cramping issues when they focus on more sodium. And yes, absolutely, some people will be able to reduce cramps through more aggressive sodium intake. I'm sure this will have a role, but there's another big influencer here, and this links to the next part of today's video. But before we jump into that, just a section to say that if you're interested in improving your Ironman performance, then consider joining the Hub, my nutrition membership for triathletes. As part of the Hub, you get full race nutrition support, including personalized carb loading plans, race plans, and yes, we go through all the nuances like carbs, fluids, and sodium intake. I'll help you to plan it out and practice it, and we can refine it based on your feedback. The Hub has already helped triathletes to smash through their long distance PBs, and I would love for you to be part of it too. You can check out the link in the comments and description section of this video. So coming back to the triathlete I mentioned at the start, there was, in my opinion, another reason that they were cramping. You see, they sent over their nutrition plan mentioning they felt they were low on sodium, but they were actually consuming about 1,400 milligrams of sodium per litre of fluid. So yes, they could go higher than that, but that's enough for most people. And the fact that they started cramping halfway through their bike points to a different reason. Muscular fatigue is the other big cause, and I think often the main cause of cramping during an Ironman. And this goes much deeper than simply feeling tired. I think there are multiple things to consider under this bracket of muscular fatigue. This includes things like working too hard at the start of the bike or the run, poor position on the bike, or not enough time spent training and building resistance. Essentially, not being conditioned enough for the distance. And this was what I think was the true cause of the problem for the triathlete that I worked with. Starting to cramp halfway through the bike suggests to me that something in their bike just wasn't right. Maybe they were too aggressive and couldn't hold that position properly, or they were getting too excited and letting their power go too high too early into the race. It's unrealistic to think that this person, who had a super amount of sodium in their fluid, was cramping that soon into their race due to low sodium levels, and no extra amount of sodium is going to fix that. And it seems to me that a lot of the people who really struggle with cramping in Ironman events are those who are newer to the sport and just haven't accumulated the same amount of time spent training or refined things like their bike position. So next time round, they've usually invested more into triathlon as a whole. Maybe they've had a bike fit, they've conditioned themselves better, and they cover the rest of their nutrition in more detail because they are simply more interested in the sport as a whole. So sure, maybe the extra sodium contributed to them not cramping, but there were lots more factors too. As a recap, let's turn this into action. First, have a smart sodium strategy. Pre-hydrate properly during the carb loading period so that you start the race in an optimally hydrated position. This is something I go into more detail in the pre-hydration module of the Tri-Fuel Academy, which is my nutrition course included in the Hub. Have a specific fluid plan for the race with fluids that contain 500 to 2,000 milligrams of sodium per litre, and top up with extra sodium capsules if you drink plain water from aid stations. Second, build real muscular endurance. Get 4+ hour rides consistently under your belt, including race pace blocks during your long rides. Spend real time in your race position. 5 minutes here or there just doesn't cut it. Focus on muscular endurance work in strength training, especially for your quads, hamstrings, glutes, and calves. Third, discipline your pacing. Use a power meter if you can, and pace the bike conservatively. Hold back even if you feel amazing early on. The key is to remember that you want to feel like you could have given it more on the bike, because then you can let loose on the run. You'll stand to be so much quicker by having a great run rather than stopping to stretch out your cramping legs. Now, this is just one small part of Ironman racing, and there's a lot more to consider when it comes to nutrition. If you want to learn how to carb load like a pro for your next Ironman, check out this video here where I run through it and stop you from making the critical mistakes that most other triathletes do.